Good morning. It is Friday, and that means that's going to be Fancy Friday, which means that I, for absolutely no reason, am going to wear a suit. And who doesn't love to do that? Anywho, let's get into it. So, you and I are now going to talk a little bit about performance anxiety, or the desire that you are most likely going to have sooner or later to impress people with your coding skills. Now, the reason why I want to talk to you about this is because I've been there. At least for things that I've always found interesting, or things that I really enjoy doing, which happens to be programming. That happens to be one of them. But it's not exclusive to programming in any way, of course. But I hope that you can relate to that. When you really care about something, you really want to get some appreciation for the things you're doing, or at least have that sensation that somebody is, that somebody appreciates what you do. Ideally, you want to impress people with your ability to perform in whatever that is you care about. And in coding, usually the way this manifests itself is in one of two ways, or sometimes both. So, for the most part, what I see, and I have done this myself as well, I see people using extremely very fancy coding techniques in a program, and I see people building or trying to add a feature or building something that is very impressive, conceptually impressive, but basically trying to add a very fancy, let's just call it a fancy feature. Now, I want to address both of these individually and explain my thoughts on how I see people misusing, or rather doing this in the wrong way, if you will, and instead of doing a good job, basically, or rather, it gets the reverse effect. So they go in with the mindset that, hey, I'm going to build this awesome thing and I'm going to impress everybody. But because they do it without a understanding of if it's a good idea or not, they actually lose a lot of that credibility. It's kind of, think of it as, how do I put it? Let's say that you're working out a lot and you start getting some muscle mass, and you're bulking up, and people are starting to say, yeah, you're looking pretty good, and then you say, hey, I want to push that even further, and then you start taking steroids, and people learn that you're taking steroids, and all of a sudden everybody kind of goes, well, you cheated, dude. And you lose a lot of that positive, the people's appreciation for it kind of dwindles. It's very similar to this. So let's talk about impressive code first and foremost. I'll give you a really good example. So let's call it a month or two, something like that. I was going through a code base that basically was a coding test for a job. And this was a React application, and there was a lot of, basically the idea was that I was going to add some features to this existing code base. And as I was walking through the code base, I saw the boilerplate, the standard React Redux setup, just everyday stuff for a React application. And then all of a sudden, I see that there's a monad in this code. An EitherMonad. And I stopped there. And I just looked at that and thought to myself, okay, this EitherMonad, the only possible reason somebody would think that there was a good idea to put a single, because they had built an entire EitherMonad instead of an if-else condition in a single, or rather, I think two places I found it, where an AJAX call was made to an external server, and they had used an EitherMonad here. Now, I never got the chance to talk to the developer behind this, but I have seen things very similar to this, and I had this sensation that this person has completely misused, in my opinion, the monad. They have added it into, like, because the thing is that if you spend enough time around people who are like working, especially these days in React, you will know that the trendiest, coolest thing that is in JavaScript today is functional programming. And the pinnacle of functional programming, especially in JavaScript land, like everybody, right, like there's so many libraries and so many people trying to figure out how can we popularize monads in JavaScript. They want to get it's an emotional desire. Nobody has actually, and I still haven't seen anybody proven definitively to me that monads are a great idea in JavaScript. I'm not saying they're not, I'm just saying that we're not at that point yet. So if you're putting in a monad in your JavaScript code base, you're not doing that because it's a good idea. Very likely you are putting it in there because you want to be impressive. You want to show that you can build a monad in JavaScript. I mean, if you can go to my GitHub library, GitHub account, and look at my attempts at making my own monads, it's possible. I'm not saying it's not. I'm just saying that if you're using that in production code today, you are not using it because it's a well-established good practice in JavaScript. You're using it because you can. And it was especially speaking to me that these single two places, there was no reason why it would have been written in this way. So to me, that is going to now have the reverse. I showed it to some of my senior colleagues and they agreed. So the person who wrote this has now gotten the reverse effect. They tried to impress, they added complexity to the code in order to impress, basically to challenge themselves, and that is not great. The thing is that if you want to impress with good code, then you have to show that you understand when a certain very elegant solution, like an elegant solution, a simple elegant solution that is a perfect fit for the problem, is going to be more impressive than a fancy technique that is very poorly executed. That's the mindset you should go for. It's about finding that perfect fit for a certain problem. That is going to be impressive. And then we take the other version of this. You are trying to build a fancy feature of some sort. You're trying to impress by how well you can manage, or like how high quality features that you can ship. My colleague this is actually I found this very kind of, I didn't feel good for him, of course, but I felt good that somebody kind of backed me up on this. So the other week, we were implementing a live chat. And if you've ever watched any of my progressive web app tech videos, you will know where this is probably heading. So he was working on this live chat feature, and it's basically a WebSockets solution where you can have a direct chat with one of the support staff. And the thing is that he was fairly, it was taking a lot of time because it's a complicated feature. And then at stand-up he was saying that, I just want to take some extra time now to make sure that it works in offline mode. And I kind of stopped him and said, wait, why do you need it to work in offline mode? Well, because if that's how all the native apps and stuff, that's how they work. So, I mean, if WhatsApp goes offline, you can still write, and then it's going to save all of the messages, and then when you go online again, it's going to push it to the server, and yada yada yada. And I said, I think that's a little bit like, now you're holding up the entire feature to build something that's really a nice to have thing that most users are probably going to maybe ask for. If we're going to get bug reports or requests for this, why do you build it before it's even desired? And he said, well, because that's the way it should be working. I said, well, a web application today, like, look at the expectations of the user. A user today does not expect their web page, web application to work in offline mode. Maybe we're going to get there, but it's not the case today. Nobody expects that, if the network goes down, we should be able to keep on using it. And if you think about it, the only time this will be valuable is if the user is specifically right at that moment talking to one of the support staff, and their network goes down at that exact moment. that's a really narrow use case, and all the time that you're spending here is actually time that could have been spent having the feature providing value to all the other users. So it's a very narrow corner case. And he said, "Oh no, but I don't agree. You should build this." And the thing is, he wanted to build it more for himself, or rather, because he thought that it's a, how do I put it? It's like in his mind, that's the way the stuff that the thing should work. And like after a week of trying to get that to work, the CTO finally stepped in and like had, he wasn't at the stand-up at that moment in time. He said the same thing to the CTO, and the CTO immediately said, "Yeah, why are you doing this?" He questioned it exactly like I did. And then he finally just gave in and shipped the feature. So those are the two times where you are going, like usually that's how programmers try to impress each other or other people. And what I'm here to tell you right now is that if you want to be truly impressive and really show that you're a good programmer, don't do it through fancy code, don't do it through over-engineering features or anything like that. Do it by doing really good work. If you want to prove that you're a good programmer, get really good at programming and build solid, well thought out features and just do a good job, and you will become impressive to people. Trust me, it's a much better path than trying to get really fancy with a lot of techniques that you don't fully grasp.